Hello everyone, my name's Brad. I'm here today with Bob Jones, CEO of the British Aikido Association. I just thought I'd ask first just to give Bob a little bit of a intro on himself. So just, I know it's a bit on the spot, Bob, but just a name, your background, your position, things like that.
Okay. My name's Bob Jones. I'm currently CEO, Chief Executive Officer of the British Aikido Association. Currently 8th Dan Aikido, Sport Aikido, 4th Dan Traditional Aikido and 2nd Dan Judo. My role is basically to look at the association and plan its forward development.
Okay. And just on the association, Bob, what is the BAA? What is it about? If people saw the branding of the BAA, how would you want them to feel about it? What is it?
Well, it's the lead organisation for Sport Aikido in the UK. Mm-hmm. It's been going since 1964 and is one of the leading worldwide exponents or promoters of Aikido as a sport, as a sporting endeavour. So therefore we were fundamental to the starting and creation of the Aikido World Championships, and we've had national championships for a long time, starting in the late 60s, 1968 I think, which was the first country in the world, including Japan, to hold a national Aikido championship.
Mm-hmm. And just a little bit there about Sport Aikido. For people watching, they might not necessarily know what Sport Aikido is. I know there's a lot of different Aikido styles that people can do. For example, Sport Aikido, traditional, Yoshinkan, Aikikai. Yeah. What separates Sport Aikido from the rest? Why is it so different?
Well, Sport Aikido tends to take, it's a philosophical view, I think, more than anything else. It's a view that the originator, Morihei Ueshiba, who more or less recreated modern Aikido, didn't really, or wasn't into Aikido as a sport. It was a philosophical endeavour, whereas we think that the sport is part of that development of a young person, especially in Western cultures. So if we can get people into Aikido through sport and eventually teach them Aikido when they get a bit older, so the Aikido develops over time, it doesn't stay the same. Sport is not for necessarily the older generations, it's a young person's game. But it allows people, it gives them a reason to get fit, it gives them a reason to train hard, just like a grading. It's a test of skill. And if you approach it in the right way, then it doesn't go against the philosophy of Aikido.
And I know there's a lot of, I guess you could say that you've had a very positive impact of the BAA and its reflection. I mean, just personally for myself, you're a massive idol of mine within the BAA. And I think, how would you say you've got to that status? How have you become an idol? Not for myself, but for many others as well. What would you say that you've done for the sport that's pushed it out there, that's really broadened it out and made it succeed?
Well, I think, yeah, good question. I think part of it is you've got to live by what you say. So when you talk about Aikido and people in Aikido having integrity, honesty, the sort of attributes, the way of the Bushido, I think a lot of people say these words, but I'm not sure how many live those words. And I think it's partly you've got to live, you've got to be it, rather than just say do this, do that, do the other. And then having been through the process of competing as a youngster in judo and aikido, and getting to the other side of that and also seeing the broader side, the educational side of Aikido, when that's finished, becoming a true Aikidoka with that understanding, the knowledge and all those other sorts of things. There's that side to it, which I've been through and can see that and what it can lead to, the positivity in young people through Aikido and competition. The two together actually give them a lot of attributes, a lot of skills, a lot of ways of personally developing themselves, not just for Aikido but for life. And then it's just a matter of hard work. So it's a matter of, at my level, and always have done, maybe putting in 2 or 3 training nights a week and 2 or 3 weekends a month. And I've done that for 40, 50 years.
And just going from there, what do you think the best highlights of that time that you've been practicing for the past 40, 50 years, what, if you had to pick a top 3, what would the best highlights that you've had as a competitor and a coach as well? What would you say are the top 3 that stand out for you?
I mean, it's not just competition, but there have been a few competitive highlights. One was the first time the British team became world champions, with the team that was there and the people that were there. The first time that Leeds, as a club, which is my home club, became British champions, which was quite, a day. But then I think the thing is that seeing people come through, and whether they stay in Aikido or not, having fulfilled lives, becoming adults, and seeing a child from 6 develop into a grown person, a rounded person. And I think every time that happens, that's really good. That's really nice.
And just going from there about watching the people and going on a journey with them, what would you say the BAA aims are? What would you say that if people were to come to the BAA that have never heard of it before, what would you say would be the main aims of them, of the BAA on a whole? Have we got any, so when I say that, I mean, in terms of the BAA itself, I mean, has it got a plan to grow and progress? Would you say there's a plan in place to help those juniors become adults? Is there anything there to support them doing that?
Yeah.
What would you
There
say
is.
are the main aims of the BAA?
Well, as an association, one of the things we try to do is try to get into the coaches so that they understand that there is a BAA way, a BAA pathway, which starts with very young people and takes them all the way through to adults. So our job is to educate the educators as an organisation, and to make them aware how they can get young people from A to B, this journey, which would include competition and post-competition, and then them themselves become coaches.
I think a lot of people have the perspective of the BAA just being about competition and Sport Aikido just being about competition. But what would you say to those people who are not really they don't have the knowledge of what the BAA is, but what would you say, I guess, to those people that are unaware of the BAA and just think that Sport Aikido is solidly on competition? You said there just before that it's a young man's game, which in competition at a physical randori side, I guess it would be. But to those people that are don't have that competitive mobility and that build and are able to compete anymore, what would you say to those people and wanting to get into Sport Aikido? Would you say, because there's no age of Aikido and anyone can get into it any time. How old are you yourself now?
I'm 68.
You're 68 now and you're still regularly training, you're coaching, you're being involved with everything. But if someone was in their late 30s, 40s, what would you say to them? What advice would you give to them to maybe not worry about the competitions and the competing side, but still wanted to get involved in it?
Well, there's 2 parts to what you just said. you can compete at any age. It's your aspirations of what you want to do. I mean, if you come to Aikido in your 50s and 60s and you have an ambition to be a world randori champion, that's probably a step too far. But there's part of the competitions is enjoying the competition. I see competition not as an end in itself, but as part of encouraging people to train hard. So, for example, in Aikido, like judo, you do gradings. And when people come to a grading, they tend to up their training because they're going to go in for a test. And if you imagine that if you had a little competition, even though you don't necessarily win it, you will up your training, you will learn more, you will try harder to get things right, to actually perform in front of people in a competition. So age isn't a barrier to competition. The result might be, but the fitness level that you need to maintain might be. But you can enter competition at whatever age and just enjoy what you're doing. So I see it as part of ongoing training, with a bit of a focus. That's all it is. But the BAA is an open association, so we have many different styles. And some people do not compete. It's not that everybody has to compete. People can opt not to compete. There are some clubs in the BAA that do not compete. And that's fine. They're just learning the Aikido. And we teach all forms of Aikido in the BAA. Sport Aikido is just the competitive bit, but I know in my club we teach more traditional Aikido, we teach Tomiki Aikido, we even teach some Yoshinkan Aikido. We teach lots and lots of different, because where you get the techniques from doesn't matter. It's what you do with them and how you can learn the different approaches to learning this thing called Aikido.
And what would you say to the clubs out there that are not a part of the BAA, but are maybe looking for a homing association? Would you say, as you've just mentioned there, it's not just Tomiki Aikido that you teach? What would you say to them clubs that are trying to find a home? Would you say that the BAA is welcoming to their styles, and is there any sort of criteria that any clubs need to match to become a part of the BAA? Is there anything there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously through duty of care, we would expect anybody who comes to teach within the BAA to have a valid certification of grade from a well-known source before we'd accept them. But then they'd have to do a coaching course and get the appropriate insurance and DBS checks and all the other things that they would have to coach anywhere in the UK, in any sport. But we do have quite a large presence of Yoshinkan clubs and traditional, what were Aikikai clubs within the British Aikido Association. We do some joint courses, and we do try to encourage them to actually, take part in the competitions and become part of the British national team.
Okay, and what would you say, I guess, to the people watching that again have never, if someone's never done Aikido before, what benefits would you say those people would have if they came onto the mat for the first time? What attracts you to do Aikido?
What
would you
attracts
say?
me to do Aikido?
Yeah.
Well, what attracted me to do Aikido in the first place was that I came from a judo background. And I think part of Aikido is the technical knowledge. It is very, very technical. The understanding is a lifetime of learning. It's not something that you can sort of do for a year and then say, I understand it, I can do it now. It's a lifetime of learning. And that attracted me as much as the competitions did as a young person. I enjoyed putting that into practice. So it's this lifetime thing, it's the philosophy, it's the sort of things it teaches you about dealing with other people, having integrity and honesty and loyalty are key parts of it.
And just very sort of a light way just to conclude there. What would you say is the future of the BAA? How would you say what's the plans that the BAA want to achieve? I.e., when I say that, I mean any ambitions to open more clubs, recruit more current clubs, increase its members. What would you say is the future? What holds the future for it?
Well, we've just put a plan in place over the last few years called a club in every town. And by its name you can tell what we're trying to do. And the idea is to actually develop more coaches, open more clubs in different locations within the UK, and expand in that way. And try to remember the BA is not a professional organisation, it's a not-for-profit, and none of the coaches in the country actually make money out of teaching Aikido. It's a purely voluntary thing. In fact, a lot struggle just to pay the rent on the hall to actually teach. So it's not an easy thing to then say we're going to recruit and get coaches in every town, because they have to be in that way that it's not for money, it's not for that personal gain. It's more about giving than it is about taking. But that is the overall plan, and the association are putting resources into that to increase participation by trying to grow more clubs, get more people in those clubs, and get them to participate, especially the younger ones and kids, in competition.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brad.
No worries.